Welcome to Spirit Talks, because your spirit talks to you. Hello and welcome to Spirit Talks. I'm Susie Beiler.
And I'm Maximilliam Haver.
And in this Spirit Talk episode, we are talking about expanding our emotional range.
Thank you for joining us and enjoy.
So Max, this topic is very close to my heart because I am a deep feeler. And for a long time, it was very challenging for me to be a deep feeler and to be so sensitive. And then I learned about expanding your emotional range. And it gave me this freedom to allow myself to really feel all the emotional stuff that I feel.
So how do you go about expanding your emotional range?
Well, first you have to really give yourself permission to go there. You have to really give yourself permission to allow the feelings and emotions that come forth within you. And it can be a challenge because if you're feeling a lower vibrating emotion, it doesn't feel great. And one thing that is very helpful is to have support when you're first starting out, so that you don't get stuck in any one emotion. So I had a mentor for 9 years. And if I felt myself kind of getting too entwined with one emotion, I would reach out for help so that I wouldn't get stuck there. And then gradually I learned to trust myself. Oh, I can do this. I can feel the depths and the deepest, darkest pain of that. And then I'll come back. It's okay if I allow myself to feel that horrible thing.
Now, what about people that are detached from an emotion that they're needing to work through?
Then it requires making a very strong intention and commitment to go in and feel. We have practiced this kind of detachment as a protection from feeling some of the harder emotions to feel. And so we need to reprogram ourselves to get the support that we need, and then to allow ourselves to feel what we actually feel. And sometimes it takes a little bit of doing. It takes some effort to actually feel for some people. You and I are very different in that way. For me, it's very easy to feel. It's always just right there. Why don't you share a little bit of your experience?
Well, for me, I have difficulty connecting with some of my past life energies and also some of my emotions that are older or deeper within myself. And so what helps me with that is engaging in the sort of the narrative of what's been going on with those energies and emotions, and speaking it aloud, sharing it with someone. And as I do
support.
Yes. And as I do that, it allows me to connect with it. And it's a very different experience because it just sort of rushes in and connects whenever it's in that sort of energy. Mm-hmm. The reason why it's so tricky is that I'm trying to discern if I'm just projecting these things or if I'm actually connecting with a deep energy that I need to work through. So is there any way to help navigate that?
Well, it takes a lot of cultivating of your discernment. You know, this is not an easy journey in this regard at times, because there is a lot of convolution in our emotional fields, in our intellectual fields. It takes a lot of doing to get clear. The clearer you become, the easier all of this is. And it's kind of tricky sometimes because it all works together. You become clearer as you expand your emotional range, and as you transmute and as you work through some of the stuff that clouds you up. So it's kind of like tackling all these different facets of ourselves at once, so that, you know, for some people, they get clear and then they can do this. For some people, they start to feel and then they get clear. And so wherever you are, it's just a matter of starting somewhere and starting to work with these different topics that we're talking about here in these sessions.
Now, can you give us an example of how detachment can be used in a healthy way?
Absolutely. Because once you start to feel these, especially with the lower vibrating emotions, you don't want to get sucked in. So that's a fine line between allowing yourself to feel it fully and completely and then releasing it and letting it go so that you don't become attached and don't become enmeshed in it. So there is a place for healthy detachment, absolutely. Now, we've been talking about the lower vibrating emotions, but part of expanding your emotional range is allowing yourself to feel the full spectrum of all emotion. So this includes happiness and joy and those higher vibrating emotions. And to be honest, I don't know what starts first, but for me, what I found was when I allowed myself to go deeper with the lower vibrating emotions, then I allowed myself to go deeper with the higher vibrating emotions. It's almost like, we want to feel the joy and happiness all the time, but we can't really get there unless we are also willing to accept and feel the lower vibrating stuff.
In a conversation we had some time ago, you mentioned it's easier for some people to connect with their shadow self, but when it comes to connecting to the light, it might be a little bit more adverse to their experience.
We're so used to engaging with the darker, heavier things because that's the paradigm that we've come from. That's what we're used to. So even though it's painful, it's familiar. And because it's familiar, in a way, it's oddly comforting. And so to expand beyond that, we must allow ourselves to grow and to experience the higher vibrating emotions, to experience the light, to embrace the light, to allow the light to be assimilated within us. And that can often be a scarier journey because it's more unknown to many of us, not to everyone, but to most of us, because we're used to being in that other paradigm with the lower vibrating energies. So it can be scarier to actually expand into the light and allow those parts of ourselves to become known to us.
And can feeling the light and all that you have that you are working through, does the light ever bring up discomfort?
Absolutely, because light shines on the shadow. So you already knew the answer to that question. But yes, of course, because of how light works. The light shines on our shadow and brings up the stuff that we, maybe don't really want to feel. But that's part of expanding the range. When you allow yourself to go higher and deeper into the light, then the light shines on those things that prevent us from our true joy. And then we can experience and feel those things and then release them. And part of what I found, someone mentioned to me the other day that I'm a very happy person. And I was like, oh, well, that's a cool perception of someone to have of me. But what I found, I wasn't always this way. What I found is that as I allow myself to expand my emotional range, I do have more inherent joy because I've given myself permission to go there. And in giving myself permission to go through that process and that journey, I've developed this muscle of trust for myself, of appreciation for myself, and that's true joy. And so even if I'm feeling horrible, at the core of that, there's joy because I'm allowing myself to feel. And that brings me joy, to allow myself to feel what I actually feel. Yeah.
So is there a difference between emotions you feel in the heart energy and emotions you feel from the ego engaging in narratives in your life? Like the quality of those emotions, is there a difference? Because you mentioned true joy instead of just joy.
That's kind of a big question. I do believe there is a difference. You know, we can feel different things from the ego, and it's like this temporary gratification, and it might feel good in the moment, but will you still feel that a week from now if it's only an ego-based emotion? The true joy comes at that soul level, comes from the heart, and it's something that's much more real.
I've also heard that the negative emotions are all ego-based and that they can feel like they're in the heart. Is there any clarity to this experience?
I don't know that I believe that, because when we're feeling what we would call a negative emotion, we're feeling it for a reason. Now, if it's a projection from somebody or something like that, it's not really ours, that's one thing. But if it's something that is coming up for us because of past trauma that we've experienced, I don't think that's from the ego. You know, we've all had trauma from our past, whether it's this lifetime or other lifetimes, and that's stored in our beings. And until we heal that and find our wholeness in it, that's there for us to deal with. And I don't think that's an ego thing.
But it wouldn't be held in the heart space. It would be held somewhere in the body or somewhere in the energy field.
If you've had your heart broken, or if you've had a heartbreaking experience, that's in the heart.
It's around the heart. It's shrouding the heart. But the heart has an inherent unity consciousness. That's why the heart is unique. So it can be a very small core that has that unity consciousness, and the shroud can be very thick around it with all this hurt and trauma, but it's not its nature.
For the what it's worth department, when I experienced heartbreak from the ending of a relationship in my past, that heartbreak caused my heart to break open. And in that breaking open of my heart, I began to feel deeper things. So you're saying that that would have just been something that was around my heart, not really in my heart? I mean, my heart was truly broken. There was pain in my heart.
Yes, that would be around the core of your energy of your heart. I'm speaking of that core energy, that where you connect with your truest, purest essence. That's always love and light. That's what I'm speaking of.
Interesting. All right, I've never thought of it that way before.
Right, and so it can be very close to it. It can be shrouding it in proximity, but it isn't the nature of the heart.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else that we'd like to share about expanding the emotional range?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is allowing vulnerability in this feeling. Of course, we can talk another episode about that.
That's the only way you can do this process, is if you allow yourself to be vulnerable.
And so being in a safe environment with the support, and if that's not available for you, make it for yourself and start from there.
Yeah, my belief is that support is always available for us. And it requires that vulnerability where we have to reach out and ask for it sometimes. We have to call a friend. We have to hire a coach. We have to, do whatever it takes. We have to ask the light realm, My belief is that support is always there. So that's never an excuse in my book.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us in this enlightening conversation. We'll see you in the next episode.
And allow yourselves to feel whatever your beautiful hearts are feeling.